So good morning. I'm Chris Cooney with the Metro South Chamber of Commerce, and it's my pleasure to welcome you back to our small business resource webinar series. We have been featuring various experts in their fields that we think would be helpful for you to meet and better understand what they do. That will then maybe help you in your business either overcome an obstacle during these times or possibly position yourself for an upgrade or a pivot to online remote learning and working in this case. I'm delighted to have with us today as our guest, Joe Lovetere from Hub Technical. I'm going to tell you a little bit about their business and a little bit about Joe. And then we're going to hear some answers to some questions that we think are important for you as a business owner to consider as you confront some of the challenges to the sudden shift that we've all had to adapt to in terms of working remotely and servicing our customers remotely. So Hub Technical, Hub Tech Partners is been located in Easton for more than 25 years, servicing clients throughout New England. They have they're partners with the best-in-class technology vendors to promote cost-effective end-to-end. They have continual resources available to you, security and business continuity solutions, uh, client computing and mobility. HubTech is a full-service IT solutions provider, and as I said, it's headquartered right here in Southeast Massachusetts. Joe is, very active in the communities and has been. I've run into him at meetings throughout the Easton area, also down in Avon and in Brockton. And I know, Joe, you've had business interest and clients in this immediate area, as well as throughout New England. I'm going to tell you a little about Joe. Joe serves as president of HubTech and is responsible for the overall operations. Um, he's overseen the evolution of HubTech, as I said, from its very kind of small start into what it is today. It's a leading solution provider delivering leading edge IT infrastructure solutions services to several state agencies. We and I have talked about that when we've done some site visits over at his place, and it really is a great resource for the state of Massachusetts and many of the agencies. In addition, he's involved with cybersecurity, managed IT, cloud strategies, and on-premise infrastructure. HubTech is also a proven HP, it's Hewlett Packard, and HPE Gold partner. That's quite an achievement. Not many small IT companies have achieved that. The company's primary goal is to ensure its clients can solve today's business challenges and their needs are met and expectations exceeded. I can tell you just from talking to many of his clients and dealing with him directly, he always gets right back to you and is always cheery and upbeat and very interesting. I'm going to learn a little bit more about him too in terms of his personal interests. The company has achieved over 10 years of double-digit growth, and Joe has 35 years of experience. Includes Compact Digital, and as well as a few other companies that he started out with in the early days. He also, is very active in Brockton, where he has served 5 mayors, Brockton mayors, in different appointed roles. He's currently the chair of the board of the Mass Hire, which Mass Hire is the old Brockton Area Workforce Board, and Mass Hire provides a lot of job search, unemployment support services, focus groups, training, and that type of thing. It's located right in downtown Brockton, and Joe is the chair of that board, and that's extremely important organization to have in the community. And Joe's leadership of that is terrific. Um, Joe, also, we were just talking about this earlier before we started recording, is that he's a car buff, and I love that. I've always said that cars, especially the earlier ones, and even today, are works of art as much as they are functional and help us day to day. And Joe and I were just talking about some of our favorite. Joe, welcome. How are you, and how's it going?
I'm great, Chris. Thanks for having me. These are trying times for everyone, and it's really a challenge for every organization, and especially small business, to find their way to keep the lights on and keep people employed. You mentioned the workforce board. We're even still actively making a switch there to remote training where it's been possible to keep classes going. The organization does a phenomenal job at meeting the needs of businesses in the area and where the jobs are. So this past year we've spent time training banking and finance, where people have been getting qualifications to work in a bank. Almost every one of those trainees got a job, which is fantastic. Naturally there's challenges now, but we'll get through it. And a lot of healthcare, a lot of the healthcare people on the front lines right now got trained at, through programs that the Workforce Board, now Mass Hire, offered. So I'm very proud of the organization. The team of people is just incredible. They make it easy for me to be the chairman and to actually facilitate and help them achieve their mission.
Well, it's a great organization, and much like you, I chaired that back probably 12 years ago, as we were going into the last recession, and I know how vitally important it is to the community. And Mass Hire, even though it's located in Brockton, right next to the chamber offices, which is right next to the city hall, it services an entire region.
That's right.
And so many people who are experiencing job loss in the surrounding towns can come into Brockton traditionally and receive training. Now they can go online and be able to access those services from their home, which is terrific.
It really is. And, it's frustrating for them now because maybe they aren't working right now. I don't know. But a lot of them are, because a lot of them were in healthcare. Banking and finance has been challenged because a lot of the banks have closed their lobbies and they're only doing remote services. So it's definitely a challenge. And what we're going to talk about today is really, how do you enable a remote workforce? What are the components that you need? What are the things that you need to be thinking about? And how exposed are you today? If you're allowing all of these people to work remotely from laptops, or desktops, is there an exposure there that you need to be aware of? And there is, and we'll talk about that. Mm-hmm. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, Chris.
Great. So I do have a series of questions here, and I know based on your experience and dealing with both small and large businesses, let us know what you think, and if you have any specific examples, that would be helpful. So let's start with this. Are companies prepared for this sudden transition to remote workforce models? Have people already done it, or you still have folks that are now coming to you going, gee, this looks like it's going to be longer than we thought. Joe, can you help us out?
So a lot of companies that have salespeople or a sales-driven organization, not necessarily from a call center type environment, right? They're still doing face-to-face sales. We support two of the largest liquor distributors on the East Coast. They're all located here in our region here. They're both billion-dollar companies. And, their sales force has been remote for years. They have to be out in front of the customer in order to sell to liquor stores and restaurants and so forth, right? So they've had the equipment, but how do you then transition the admin staff, the accounting staff, the support staff for those salespeople that interface with who gets your product out the door? Obviously, you've got to have people that can still get product out the door if you're a product-driven organization. So there are you can definitely move these positions to a remote model, and it can be done with laptops and desktops, provided that you have VPN resources within your network. Many do, but it's usually through their firewall, and they're limited by how many people can have an active VPN at one time. So there are VPN devices that you could buy or invest in and add to your network that would allow you to have a lot more active VPNs and not just only come through the firewall. One of the risks in doing this is that you can, if you're not vigilant about how your network is constructed, how that firewall is set up, you could have an open port on that firewall that you're not even aware of. And this is where the criminals who are out there every day trying to breach your network can maybe have access and get in when you don't even know that they're in through an open port. So why would you have an open port? In some cases, it may be for software support. You have an affiliation with someone who has written the software for your organization or supports the software for your organization, and they need a port to come through. And if you're not turning that port off, or you're not opening it for them only when they're going to do that support, that port could remain open, and it could be a risk, an open risk to you. So some of the things that you have to have right off the bat is equipment. You have to have laptops or desktops, right? If you're going to conduct meetings in the way that we're doing it right now, you have to have a camera and a microphone. Yeah. And that can be done with a headset and a camera, or you can get a unified piece that will provide you both, and it will plug right into your laptop or your desktop. And it makes it very easy. Platforms that we're looking at, we're using Zoom today. Very easy, and it works as advertised. You may have heard that there are some security risks with Zoom, and on the public versions of Zoom or the free versions of Zoom, there certainly are, where it's open and a meeting can be commandeered by someone. But overall, it does work, and if you are using the subscription version, you should be able to put some security controls in place that would prevent interruptions outside from that. So that's like step one in terms of what you would need.
Yeah, so it sounds to me that companies may have components that they've purchased over the years, but they need maybe a company like yours to take an inventory of what they have, what the capabilities are, and then figure out the gaps and make a recommendation to pull that current inventory in with the new components and be able to give them kind of a seamless structure. Now, even if they do all that, there's still a security issue that really needs to be addressed. And so it is important to have somebody who understands all of that, and not just kind of help, as you say, taking the free option or the inexpensive Zoom, and then opening up possibly a security risk.
Sure.
So talk to us a little bit about how you do that. Do you come in and do an inventory, or how is that?
Yes. So a couple of the other platforms, WebEx and GoToMeeting have been out there for a long time. Citrix is very secure, and now they're seeing a resurgence in their business because of GoToMeeting. So this is not a new concept. But there are other things that you need to have from a collaborative standpoint in order to effectively do this with your company. If you're not using Microsoft Teams, which is a platform that allows you to introduce files that you can look at and be able to look at PowerPoints and do directed PowerPoints, share files, put files on so that everybody can either manipulate that file or get a copy of that file, I would recommend that you do that. Microsoft Teams can also give you this video capture that we're doing now. You can record them. You don't actually have to have Zoom if you're a Microsoft user. You can definitely use Teams. Many of us have gone to Office 365. So for the original question, are you prepared? What do you need to be prepared? If you've already moved to Office 365, you've got a huge component that's going to help you collaborate and be able to access your files, or at least your emailed files remotely. And that's, those who haven't moved to that are dependent on an Exchange server, and that means you have to come through that network, come through that VPN securely to access that email and to share files. So, again, if people are interested in moving to Office 365, they've not done that, we can facilitate that and make that very easy and simple and straightforward for them. The other things that they might need to consider are, what legacy apps do they have that are on servers within their organization? Is it necessary to get to them? Like in the case of the liquor distributor organization, they're not using a cloud-based, they're using on-premise. So they've got to bring everybody through in order to interact that business and enact that business. Today with Microsoft Azure, nobody really has to have a hard server on premise. They can move pretty much all of their applications. Needless to say, they have to be certified or tested for Azure, but it can be moved out, and organizations can streamline their network, and we do that with an assessment. And that assessment can be done remotely in some cases, and in some cases it will require an on-site physical review of the equipment that you have, the network equipment that you have, how it's connected, how you're utilizing it, and how the people within the organization or the building or the premise are connected to it. How do the remote people connect to it? And then there's the whole aspect of security assessment, which there are a multitude of controls. And this is where people can get in trouble. They've got all these people now working remotely, and maybe they weren't intending for them to originally be working remotely. What do they have access to? What files do they have access to? So will you experience data leakage from the admin staff or the accounting staff working remotely on a home laptop or a home desktop? And the answer is yes, unless you have the appropriate controls in place. So, do you want your employees, who now are working remotely, to be able to print critical documents at their home? You can limit that, but you've got to be able to do that through Active Directory and some other controls that you could put in place. The art of doing a security assessment isn't just how's your firewall, do you have antivirus? It's really a lot more with how are people authenticating?
Mm-hmm.
Are you using a multi-factor authentication?
Yeah.
And with remote access now, multi-factor authentication is one of the best things that you can do to ensure you don't have somebody that's trying to breach your network.
Okay.
And what I mean by that, Chris, is you've probably already worked with a bank or your retirement plan or whatever, where you try to connect to it and you've got to get a code off of your phone. So as soon as you're trying to log in and you put your password in, they send you a code. Well, that's how they're confirming that it's you.
Sure. They first send you an email saying, we don't recognize this device, right?
Right.
And then they say, can we send it to your phone? Right. And then you get the code.
Right.
And go through that whole process. And you're saying that's the third-party authentication that you're talking about.
It's really essential moving forward to ensure that you have a good security controls in place for remote workers. Okay. And again, that's not something that's real difficult to do, but it does require someone with expertise to be able to help you roll it out to your team and have it be as unintrusive as possible to them.
Sure. So I was reading an article not long ago saying that if you have a server in-house, it's really kind of the old model for a lot of small businesses, and that that server probably costs to install $5,000 to $7,000 to $10,000,
mm-hmm.
and it gives you a kind of a choke point for access for your remote access. So I was reading about the 365, where it's a subscription service, but it's kind of low cost relatively. And
mm-hmm.
you're not going to have that big financial outlay for a new server, which could be crashed by having too much volume now from your remote workforce. So sure. It sounds like you're pretty positive about 365 and that type of approach, having it.
Well, again, Microsoft 365 is only, and that's what it's called now. They've changed the name from Office 365 to Microsoft 365. So that's really going to provide only the email platform and your Outlook platform, right? There still are going to be files or programs that you need to run your business. And that might have been done on a legacy server, like you mentioned, within your building. It no longer has to be. Now, if the programs are too old and they've not been certified for Azure, you'd have to experiment to see if that can be done. And again, we can help do that, where we'll build an Azure server in the cloud, and working with whoever is most knowledgeable about the application, move that application out to the cloud and do some testing to see if there are problems. If it's already been certified for Azure, it's super simple to do this. It's not like most people think. In the old days, it might be a $50,000 engagement to migrate applications from one server to another server, or from one application platform to another application. Today, it can be done with, a few $1,000s of, skilled labor, to accomplish those goals. So, and again, it just depends on, how many servers you're dependent on, how many applications you're dependent on. A lot of people have already moved a lot of applications to the cloud. If you think about Salesforce.com, most organizations are using Salesforce.com or an equivalent already in the cloud. So one of the things that brings us to, Chris,
Yeah.
is the network. Because even if you're going to move these servers to the cloud, and you can move them to the cloud, you still need to be able to network everyone that is in the building. And that requires a robust network. If you're using equipment that is, 5 to 10 years old, it's time to upgrade. And even from a security perspective, there are probably holes in those switches that people can exploit. It's definitely time to upgrade. If you think about wireless, we're doing so much more today with wireless than we ever have within an organization, not just at the Starbucks down the street, right? And that brings up even those people that are working remotely from a Starbucks, and they think, well, I'm already working remotely. There's no problem. There's no risk. Not true.
Yeah.
So you're on a public Wi-Fi, and you are at risk of somebody seeing your screen, even physically seeing your screen while you're working, or even capturing that screen from outside the store with their own equipment. And maybe you are working on critical files. Maybe you've just reset an admin password remotely, and they captured that password. So you have to be weary of public Wi-Fi.
Wow.
And at home, we need to think about the same thing, because most people, maybe have a Comcast box. They have Wi-Fi. Once it was set up, they never touched it again. Probably set up by the Xfinity or Comcast person who did it originally, and he might have asked you some questions you didn't even understand, right? So you need to take a look at that, and organizations should be taking a look at that, or giving a set of guidelines to their workers. And this is something else that we can help develop, is a remote worker policy. Okay. And you really should have one, because they could be broadcasting their SSID, so somebody could have full access to their router and their Wi-Fi. They can encrypt their Wi-Fi communication, and you have to take the steps to do it. They may not be doing it, and they need to have a really long password that can't be breached. And it doesn't have to be super complicated. It can be a phrase, and you can substitute digits for letters in the word, like 3s for E's, 0s for O's, and it makes it very difficult to crack. You can use obviously special characters, a variation of capitals and uncapitalized letters. So it's just got to be something that you can remember, or at least be able to recover. So these are all steps that the remote worker needs to be doing, but the organization has the responsibility to give them the guidelines.
There you go. Okay.
As to how to set it up.
Yeah.
And
that guidance is critical, and having those policies in place oftentimes is part of an accreditation or just good business practices that any business should adopt. What we're hearing more and more in our briefings, how much information intelligence is being harvested from even remote workers or traveling workers to other parts. We're being advised now that our companies should not be allowing employees to travel with their cell phone that is issued by the company, but giving them what they call a burner phone, kind of a one-time use phone, because of exactly what you just described. You may not even realize that you're getting engaged into a network just by walking past a coffee shop, in a foreign country. You might have data pulled out. And it was interesting in the security briefing that I went through, is how much data is being pulled in and processed by characters who are really trying to, in some case, steal credit card numbers, but more importantly, copyrighted or copyrightable products that are in development by even major companies, that if they can kind of grab that information, perfect it, and file the copyright before you can, they can actually rob a company from their an income stream that they thought was going to be a sure thing a year out or 2 years out. So I know that's kind of gets into some big company issues. We're dealing mostly with small companies in this
Sure.
region, but the components are the same. Is you really don't want your information, especially if you're subjected to people's credit card information or HIPAA or that type of thing, to be out there, especially unintentionally. So
Right.
kind of coming back to what we're talking about is that you kind of laid out a pathway for adoption of a technology, a modern technology plan, which includes an inventory of what you have for resources,
Right.
recommendations for creating a bridge to the gaps that exist, doing a security audit as if you would
Right.
a regular financial audit, just to kind of adopting best business practices and sharing those with your clients and their employees, and also
Right. Correct.
customers, to reassure them. What else, Joe?
So
What else?
there are a couple of things, Chris. You may have heard of cybersecurity training. It's a real thing. And, naturally everybody gets their tips off the internet, or they get, a notification from somebody, you should be doing this, you should be taking these steps. But cybersecurity awareness training is something every organization should be doing, because the number one risk you have are your employees. It's number one. Today we've become so much more flexible and tolerant to somebody who's ordering on Amazon, or buying something off of eBay in the middle of the day, or when they get a chance to, right? I mean, it's just the reality that we live in today. They're checking their Facebook page, and all they need to do is click on one file that they don't think is threatening, and they could have unleashed a ransomware that could cripple the company. And you've read and heard enough about them on the news. It's a real deal. It can cost millions of dollars in damage. It's taken down an entire health care organization for days before they could get restored. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, Chris, some of the tactics you can take to protect yourself. But cybersecurity awareness training is an organized platform that you roll out, and what you're doing is you're conducting tests. You're putting out files that you're trying to get your employees to possibly click on.
Okay.
And it teaches you what they don't understand about why they shouldn't have done that.
Okay.
Ultimately, that platform would give you some way of identifying files that are suspect, and you click on a link within your Outlook page, and it flags that email as suspect. And then your security manager or your network manager can look at it, and they can either open it in a sandbox where it won't do any damage, or they can just literally know that it's come from a suspect source and it should be discarded. And it can be blocked at the firewall, once you have that email address. But you could be doing that forever, because these they're getting smarter and smarter. The threats are constant. But cybersecurity awareness training platform, it's one of those subscription services. It costs you a few dollars a month per employee, but you're being made aware of the threats before they become widely known, or you ever read about them in the newspaper.
Okay.
Or see them on the news, right? Or read them on your phone, right? Should we talk about current? Most people are getting their news now off of their cell phone. So that's one thing. The other thing is, everybody thinks
Is that a link, Joe, that you could share in terms of what you just mentioned?
Again, a lot of it's through our website, but
Okay.
yes,
Right.
if you look at us, we're on Twitter, and we have a Facebook page. So if you want to look at us on Twitter, you can see a lot of. We're always putting out updates to what the latest threat is, or what the latest strategy is to mitigate a threat.
So we'll share that with everyone, just the folks that are listening today. Great.
And the next one is antivirus, right? Everybody thinks that because they have antivirus, they're protected. And they might think that their only exposure is that they didn't allow the last update.
Mm-hmm.
That's one easy thing to do. Make sure you're doing your Microsoft updates. Make sure you're doing your antivirus updates. But we're beyond antivirus today. Today, it's advanced threat detection. So what antivirus did for you was to provide some level of protection, some way of stopping or slowing down something or quarantining something that might be suspect. Today, advanced threat detection will actually try to mitigate something that may have been unleashed. So if an executable file that somebody clicked on starts doing something on a server, it will stop it and contain it. And it may already have done damage, but the damage has been minimized.
Okay.
And then it will actually do some proactive measures, which will try to bring whatever version of that program that was unaffected back.
Okay.
All of this can be done dynamically. It's not, and what it does by having these solutions is you're not paying an organization like ours to come in and mitigate, what somebody has unleashed on you. So advanced threat detection, Sentinel-1 is one of them. There's just a whole ton of them out there, but we use the Sentinel-1 platform. And we're happy to answer any questions that somebody might have about how to roll that out. We do it as part of our managed service platform. And, again, people are struggling with, well, I got an IT guy and I pay him X amount of money and he comes when I need him to come. And, God forbid he gets hit by a bus or, something else happens to him, he's not available to you. Our platform is a managed platform. It's a team of people, and most of it is automated. So it's already proactively working for you. And when you do have an issue, it's so much easier to mitigate it because we have the intelligence of how your network is constructed. And it allows us to do that through the various platforms and our own proprietary technology that we have to manage someone's network environment. So those are some things that you can do. You can engage and do a risk assessment and really understand, where you're at. You may have an IT team and you're totally comfortable. He's great, she's great, they're great, but has it ever been validated?
Yeah.
Today, from a compliance standpoint, whether it's a healthcare organization, a government organization, a financial organization, they have to be compliant. Well, they can't do that only with their own people. They'll bring in auditors to do it, outside experts to do it, and we can certainly do that for organizations. Be that outside, it's not about trying to call someone out as doing something wrong. And in a lot of cases, we're not opposed to doing knowledge transfer, where we help your IT team understand their environment, understand what the latest and greatest things that you could be doing are. You may not have the budget for all of them, but you want to be aware of them.
Mm-hmm.
You want them to be aware of them. So by engaging in an organization like ours with a skilled set of incredible people that really stay on the edge of technology, these guys just love it. They just love all the latest and greatest. They're out there, challenging what you find. They know about the dark web and, where the threats come from on the dark web. And again, what strategies you can put in place to mitigate those. You can't eliminate all of it, right?
Yeah.
Because they're going to continue to be enterprising, and you don't have oversight of what goes on in Russia. And now we've learned we don't have oversight of what goes on in China. Well, that's only the two big names. You've got Eastern European countries, you've got Northern African countries that have boiler rooms, and all they're doing is trying to capture patterns on over-the-air communications. Like you mentioned earlier, Chris, they know what a social security card number looks like in terms of that pattern. They know what a credit card looks like in terms of that pattern, and they're looking for that with AI, right? Artificial intelligence. They have programs that are actively assessing this could be something, and they store that little byte, and then they go back and look at it. And maybe that's a password that allowed them, maybe it's a password that can get them through a firewall, and now they've got the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah.
So, these threats are not going to go away, and we need to be way out in front of them. And we pride ourselves on doing that for our clients.
Well, it's great to have a company like Hub Technical right here in Easton. You grew it from its infancy here, and you obviously have some very large clients in terms of the state of Massachusetts and the example you just cited of the liquor distributors. Do you also serve small companies?
We do, Chris. Again, I'm old school, and I carried a tool bag. And we have, dozens of businesses that are, retail stores. They manufacture maybe, we have one that's, if you buy your soups at Costco, we do the IT work for them. It's Blount Foods. So, there's just a whole host of different companies that we help. The single person in an office, that's usually not our customer. They're going to look for the guy that, or the kid coming out of school that, they try to minimize that expenditure. We can support that person, surely. But, our sweet spot is anywhere from, on the small business side, it could be 10 employees to 100 employees. But we support school systems with 10,000, 15,000 users. The Commonwealth of Mass, we have several of the largest agencies we support: the Attorney General's Office, the Inspector General's Office, the Executive Office of Health and Human Services, just to name a few. We've done the network assessment for Massport, all of the terminals at Massport, and helping them determine whether their provider was giving them a good service and what was useful to patrons of the airport, and it helped them take their decision making to the next level. So we did every single terminal, including the Black Falcon terminal in South Boston. So we're capable of really managing the smallest company to an international company, and we have an international bank that we support. And it's not at every level. There are some, we do different things for different people. In some cases, we manage entire networks. In some cases, we provide the help desk services to the users. In some cases, we handle only the asset management. All of these devices that we're talking about, the desktops, the laptops, they don't have the team that can roll that out because they get changed every 3 years. Sure. As the technology changes, as the operating systems change, they need to stay current. They can't have an old fleet out there. So,
you help
organizations, go ahead.
Do you help bid that out for the agencies and then install it or integrate them into the?
We do both. In some cases, they might work directly with the manufacturer and they have a relationship there, and they can drop ship all of that equipment to our facility. And then we can image that equipment for them. We have secure imaging labs with secure internet connections that are completely separate from our own to be able to provide those services. So we can literally do probably 500 to 1,000 units a day for an organization, meaning take the programs that they need on each one of those desktops and laptops and burn them out to all of them so that we can deliver them to them, or we can actually put them on the desk and take the old equipment off so they don't have to deal with any of it. And we do a variety of those services for many different companies and a lot of healthcare organizations and hospitals we support. Wow. So that's one of the reasons why I'm here today. We are an essential business. We've got a team of people that we've kept safe, but we have our vehicles are sanitized daily. They take them to every location, but we have project managers that lay the groundwork for that. So we know what we're going into in terms of the environment. They got to be masked and gloved, and the same thing on the other side, so that we're minimizing any risk of transmission and for them themselves to get it. So we're still available to go on site. We were on site at a small law firm yesterday, solving a problem for him, and it was just Office 365 that he was struggling with, and his secretary could not connect to the documents. And he was frustrated. The person that normally helped him out couldn't help him out. And we solved the problem within a couple of hours of being on site.
That's terrific, Joe. That is terrific. So just in kind of wrap up in conclusion, any final tips for small businesses or home users who are now find themselves working from home?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, right, run your updates. Make sure that that's happening. Make sure they're turned on. Your Microsoft updates are one of the simplest security protections that you can do. Virus updates, have to do it. Check the Wi-Fi, and if you're not sure, check with your IT vendor or your IT people at your organization. If they haven't given you a written checklist for how you should be configuring your laptop and the network on your laptop and what your network you're connected to, ask them for it. Because you don't want to be the person who ends up unleashing something on the organization. It's not only going to take down your desktop and laptop, but it could, just poison the entire network. Look at where companies are today. They're on shoestrings in some cases,
Yeah.
and the last thing they need is some type of network breach.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned
the other thing too, Chris, is do not use Gmail. If you're working from home, do not communicate with employees through Gmail or some other platform. And I'm not calling out, Google's Gmail, but whether it's Yahoo or whoever. But if it's a personal email, unless it's a last resort, you should not be using it to transfer any company information, any company files, or communicating with other employees, because you can either get something from them or you can give them something that you're not even aware of. Okay. Always use the corporate platform.
Well, you just brought up a great point, and that is internally you can be very secure. You can have the audits. You can hire a hub technical to make sure that you're in compliance. But we've also heard that the weak link sometimes is the contractor or the subcontractor. In many cases, that can be the accounting firm or the law firm or the design team that is linking or you're sending files to that is outside of your secure box. Exactly. And oftentimes that's when data can be breached or stolen.
That's right.
And have you seen that?
Yes, and there are encryption. Obviously, you can lock down any document that you send, but you're only doing that at the local level with a password. If you're using a platform like DocuSign or one of the Acrobat platforms, there's multiple ways that you can encrypt. You can use Barracuda encryption, and you can encrypt any document or email that you're sending, and the other people cannot get it unless they, put a password into your encryption solution and get it. In the case of DocuSign, it's a little bit different. In Acrobat, it's a little bit looser than that, right? But they are out there, and organizations and small businesses should be utilizing them. And even if you're, interestingly enough, local attorneys, they absolutely should be doing this. They should not be sending documents with numbers in them or documents that have personal information. Imagine sending a deed remotely, and it gets intercepted, and it's not a deed that's been signed yet. It could create exposure and possibly cause somebody to tie up their property, in order to get it rectified. So it's just not worth the risk. So there are definitely steps that you can take, and we're happy to help anybody that has questions relative to them.
Great. Thanks, Joe. And thanks for spending so much time with us. I know I wanted to come back to the vehicle, your favorite vehicle, because we were talking a little bit about that, and you're an enthusiast. And I know you've got several, but what's your favorite vehicle that you have in your collection?
My favorite one that I don't ever see myself selling is the 66 GTO. Wow. And it's bright red with a white top and a red interior, and it's not perfect. I'm not afraid to drive it, although it's not seen rain in probably, 15 years.
Okay.
But I just love the car, and it harkens me back to when my uncles, would buy new Pontiacs every few years, and they were always looking for the latest changes in design. And I knew everything about Pontiac, so I always wanted one.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. What does it have under the hood?
A 389 that's been rebuilt, and it's still amazingly powerful.
And does it have the 4 on the floor shift?
No, it doesn't. I wish it did. This one here came from Texas, and it was an automatic. And what I was really looking for was a body that hadn't been ravaged by salt and snow,
Okay.
And that's why I went ahead and bought. And the person that I bought it from was just a gentleman, and we remained friendly for a long, long time. I lost touch with him now, but he was into cars, and he would send me pictures of whatever he was buying and working on, and I would do the same. And it was kind of a fun thing. It's really a great hobby.
Sounds like it was destiny when he came across that car and fixed it up. That's terrific. Terrific, Joe. Thanks so much for taking the time to be with us. Hub Technical right here in Southeastern, but servicing all of New England. Really a great story of a business developing right here, and Joe Lovetere guiding it to its success that it has double-digit growth the last 10 years. That's just tremendous. So thank you for being with us. And we're going to include all of your information as well as your tweets and your site and all of that so that folks can follow up with you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I've enjoyed it.
Take care.